Welcome back to the side stories from Between the Ashes here on Paladin Gaming. A third one just unlocked after the fourth mission. A smuggler in the barracks. The pilots of Task Force 27 had gathered in Wayfarer Station's decontamination room, awaiting the all-clear to properly come aboard. Modern science had gotten the process down to only a few minutes, but couldn't completely eliminate it. The need to screen for the Lucerta plague, whose spores could survive hard vacuum and even unshielded exposure to subspace. The need to screen was very real, especially here in Lighton. That's not to say it wasn't without its upsides. The delay could be a welcome opportunity for pilots returning from flight ops to catch a breath. The operative word there was could. After today's sortie, standing around doing nothing in his underwear was the last thing one Ensign Martellato was the last thing on Ensign Martellato Assis's mind. He wasn't sure what he wanted. To yell at someone, perhaps, until anger died away and he could go back to feeling like a person. There was just a small matter of who. Glancing over the other people in the decontamination room was a fruitless endeavor. His squadron leader is more of the strong, silent type. Martellato had long ago come to suspect there was some trauma there, although he couldn't fathom what. That is, of course, us. Rosemary was probably the right choice in the vacuum. The empathetic spiritual ensign understood people the way Mart understood computers. The problem was that she'd try to understand him in that oh-so-patient way of hers. Worse, she might offer him tea. Besides, she'd taken a dose of combat stims during the attack on the Carawent. It had taken Mart some time to get used to the Navy's unconcerned attitude towards such things, and her lucidity would be questionable now that they'd started to wear off. That left Charon, the reason he wanted to scream in the first place. He could play host to some Syndicate thugs if he had to, but what Charon had said had come disturbingly close to defending them. On one hand, he knew she'd just been quoting regs. On the other, there were some very dark thoughts that he knew better than to think right now. What he wanted, actually, was to talk to Folos. The eccentric support pilot had more in common with him than technical skills. Unfortunately, she was off in the Oort cloud. Without any good options, he just seethed. Neither Charon nor Martellato were quite sure how they ended up showing their new guests around the station. Their squadron leader had been called away to a strategic session, and Rosemary temporarily remanded to sickbay. They left the two of them with some downtime, and someone had to do it. Martellato carefully avoided getting too involved, so as not to say something he'd later regret. The distance let him observe them frankly. The core of the group seemed to be three men: Elias and Hamid Pendergast, who owned the ship, and Dmitry Makarov, the head of their security team, who talked like he'd known Elias for a long time. Martellato did not like Dmitry. He had all the bluster of a syndicate boss, but he wasn't, not even close. Martellato knew how they named their fighter wings, and Dmitry's designation meant he was just a rent-a-cop who liked to talk big. He was about to write him off as a wannabe, but one thing complicated that analysis. Isa Thorne, his rookie wingmate, who seemed to go by they. There was a level of caring there that Martellato hadn't expected, the way he encouraged them to speak up and ask questions, the way he emphasized their role in the fight, and the way his bluster seemed to diminish to make room for them all, suggested there was more to him. It was the same way with Elias himself. He spoke about the Regulan leadership with disdain, but it was the disdain of someone who'd been wrong, not someone trash-talking the competition. And so, when Charon approached him later to ask why he'd been so agitated on the sortie, he was able to give a calm answer. The Syndicate-owned freighter Obsidian Heart was scheduled to make a delivery. Perfectly ordinary in and of itself. The problem was that the Alliance had been moving investigators into the system. They'd been making patrols around the drop site, and the Obsidian's cargo wasn't exactly legal. Her captain had a simple plan to deal with it. A Mustang-class fighter, the Charlie variant with expanded EWAR capabilities, would jump in on the sly and set off a decoy beacon. Once the Alliance moved to check it out, the Obsidian would jump ahead, make the drop-off, and switch to backup drives for a getaway. There was only one difficulty: the person responsible for the plan himself. Yo, asses! Mart stood up a little too quickly, banging his head on the underside of his fighter. He and the Obsidian's captain hadn't seen eye to eye about much of anything since he'd come aboard, and this delivery was the latest in a series of frustrations. Some days, most days, he wondered why he hadn't quit. As Mart rubbed the back of his head, the captain approached. "You got your fighter ready yet?" Mart knew he couldn't say what he really thought, so he settled for groaning in the other man's direction. "What, you think I'm filing my taxes here?" The captain folded his arms, doing his best to loom over Mart in spite of the height difference going the other way. You know how important this delivery is, and we just hit the 24-hour mark. About a minute less than a day to get ready. So, you planning on setting that fighter for silent running, or no? It's not quite that simple, Mart said, and winced as the captain snarled. Shutting the transponder down is just the first step. It's got all kinds of pingback functions just to make what we're doing hard. You can't just turn those off, not without powering down the whole sensor grid. I'm not saying I can't do it, it's just a bit of a process, that's all. Just let me do my job, and... That's a lot of words to say yes, the captain said with a sneer. I got a lot riding on this. That package gets to our client, our employer's got an in with one of the big players, and I've got an in with our employer. And if this goes south, it's your ass in that cockpit. You fail me, the Alliance can have you. As the captain turned to leave, Mart struggled to hold back a snarky comeback. As he swaggered away, his last words echoed in Mart's head. You fail me, the Alliance can have you. The Alliance was known to waive prison time in exchange for military service for people with the right skill sets, and in his years of escorting smugglers, Mart had gotten very good at his job. What if he only said he'd made the modifications? Just some bad experiences when I was living up there, Mart said. Ah, what the hell, it's alright. I got them back eventually. So, backstory for one of our pilots. So this has been the third side story for Between the Ashes for Freespace 2 here on Paladin Gaming. This is Paladin Gaming, signing off.